Hi there, Sandra here from Create in Spain. I've been having a bit of fun with multimedia stuff at the moment and conducting a few little experiments which have given me some interesting results. Now this here is actually ink, it's alcohol ink, it's on felt. Yeah, slightly different to normal, that's not what you would expect to see. Now, if you were going to try and do it on felt normally, it would be pretty much impossible to get it to flow because felt is absorbent. I mean, you know, it's not going to do what alcohol inks are really good at, is it? And I just thought it would be fun to see whether we could change that. And I've come up with a couple of, well, 3 different methods of doing this, which are really quite interesting. And I think will be interesting to those who like to work with fabrics as well as with papers and things like that. So how did I do this? It was actually relatively simple. I had some backing paper from some sheet vinyl. Now I tried this with wax paper, it did not work. It didn't like my wax paper for some strange reason. So you probably need to weight it down. And I've actually got, would you believe it's car weights in here. I got from my husband. I just covered them with some fabric-y stuff so that they would be able to be handled more easily. So you need to weight it down because it has a tendency to curl up. So you want to weight it down and then just do your alcohol painting as you do normally, enjoy and allow it to dry. All you do then is spread on some Liquitex. Now this is the gloss gel. And you can dilute this up to 25%, I think it is. Yeah, you can add up to 25% water. I used it straight out of the jar because I wasn't using very much. There's no point in trying to dilute that. And you spread it over your ink picture. Now, you cannot do this if you're using photo card. It doesn't work. Tried it, doesn't work. The photo card sticks to it. You just won't get that apart. So you put the gel over the top and then while it is still wet, you just put your felt over the top of that. And then you just take some baking parchment, put it over the top. I used a craft iron and just ironed it. When it is done, and obviously it would be that way up, when it is done, you'll end up with this quite tough plastic coating over the top and your ink design is transferred to the felt. You just peel off the paper that you painted on and that's it, you're done. Now this is quite plasticky. I didn't, as I said, dilute it, so it's not hyper bendable. I mean, it does bend, but it's quite stiff. However, if you were going to try and cut that on a cutting machine or something like that, that would probably cut really well. So I then thought, I wonder if there's any way of doing it if you don't have anything like Liquitex. Because, you know, we've not all got those things in our store cupboard. I have, but, you know, I've been collecting stuff for years. Okay. And I thought, can you possibly do a picture on this? So yeah, I decided that was a possibility. So what you can actually do is put this stuff over your fabric. Again, apply some heat, peel that off, and lo and behold, this is actually now satinized. It looks really, really pretty. It's got kind of like a sheen to it. Now this stuff has got these funny little gluey textured bubble type things, so I wasn't expecting that. And it's created quite an interesting effect. But, so what I did in this particular case was I turned it over, I was using the sticky side, did my design on that, allow it to dry, put your fabric over the top and then put your parchment over the top of that and iron it. and it bonds to the fabric pretty well. I mean, yes, you could peel it off if you wanted to, but it is stuck on there quite nicely. So you might possibly have a use for that, and you could most certainly cut that quite easily. So if you're prone to using things like heat and bond and that sort of stuff, and this is cheaper for you to buy, then that might be a feasible alternative. Even cheaper is ye old standard cling film. Now this one happens to be the thicker one for catering use. My husband just happened to find that on Amazon and he bought it because it was on a large roll. We tend to like cling film for all sorts of things. And you can do that in the same way. Do your painting on the cling film. If need be, you can tape it down to a surface to make it nice and flat. Allow it to dry, put your fabric over the top of it, cover it with a parchment, a light iron, and in this particular case, that is pretty well bonded to the fabric. You can see that the excess will peel away from here, leaving that covering on the felt. And again, that would probably cut quite easily. So yeah, this kind of opens up a range of possibilities if you wanted to do applique on bags and things of that nature. You could use either technique. Like I said, this one, it doesn't feel as stiff as this one does, and it's very cheap. I mean, cling film is pence, isn't it? It's, yeah, cents, pence, whatever it is that you use. It's not expensive stuff. Again, this is the sticky side up I've chosen to use. Just going to put some inks on here. Now you might be thinking, this is okay, but what happens if I want to put it onto a dark fabric? Because alcohol inks don't show up against a dark background. In general, I agree with you. Now, just for the sake of being quick, I'm just going to mush that around like that and allow it to dry quickly. I'm not going to add anything else to it, just having an experiment here with silver. And once this is dry, I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on top. Found an old t-shirt that I've put into my fabric stash. So now I'm going to place that over the top. I'm going to iron over the top of this. It'll probably smush a bit because it wasn't quite dry. Now I would say do this in a well ventilated room because you do get a bit of fumes off the plastic. Right, let's see how that's done, shall we? So that is actually quite nicely on there. Now normally you would be doing a whole surface, or you would have a cutout shape that you are applying to something else. So this is actually stuck. But there you have a design that you could have had on a dark cushion or something of that nature. It feels plasticky. If I stretch it, you can see that it's not suitable for something which is going to be washed. This is for doing maybe fabric medium collage, relatively temporary things, okay? But it definitely transfers to the fabric. So if you wanted to make wall art, for example, and you have fabric that you can use and you've got bits of wood you can use for frames, you could make your fabric go over your frame and use that method to transfer your design. It's an interesting thing to be able to do, and I'm sure there are quite a few different uses for it. Right, this is dried. I had a bit of a brain fart and I went to put black medium on top. I have no idea why. It's never going to show the black there, so I just scrape it off. But you'll get the gist of the idea. So, whoops, that was a bit more than I intended. Some white acrylic medium. It's dissolving it because my ink isn't as dry as it should have been. Never mind. I think you get the general gist of the idea. So put this over the top. See, the better idea might have been just to tint my Liquitex with the white paint so that it wouldn't be transparent, but I didn't do that. But there is a distinct possibility of using it just to transfer, unless this gets melted onto it. If the iron was a lot hotter, it would probably have melted it onto there completely. But yeah, possibilities to play around with if you're into mixed media. Maybe some ideas that you hadn't thought about and would like to try out. Okay, I decided to go for another experiment. Just occurred to me it might work, you never know. So I've got baking parchment here and I'm just going to swipe on some Liquitex. I'm using Liquitex, it's what I've got. It's a decent medium, so why not? And now I'm going to actually put some gold flake on here. If I can get the top off. Bit of gold flake. Yeah, why not? And now I'm going to go in with some inks. Right, okay, slight problem in that this has started to absorb liquid, so this may not work at all. I suspect it would work on other mediums, but maybe not on this one. Come in with a bit of alcohol. Now that's not really quite dry yet, but it's dry enough that it's not flooding everywhere. So I'm going to put my felt piece over the top of that, another piece of baking parchment over the top, and try ironing it and see what happens. I've got it stuck together, I can turn it over and I can iron it from this side. I'm just curious to see whether the baking parchment will stick to it or whether it will actually come off. Because if you can do it with baking parchment, it does make life quite easy. Let's have a look, see what's happened. Okay, it does transfer. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get the baking parchment off of it. Which would be a shame, because I think this is going to look quite pretty actually. It worked. Completely transferred to the felt, and so I've now even got some gold shimmery pieces in there. Great fun. So I've got a piece of normal cling film. I've put a piece of white paper underneath so you can see the colour and everything going down. And I'm going to try something very similar but without the Liquitex this time, and see what happens when the gold flakes go on. Don't even need to put any more of those on now, just move them around just a little bit. That'll do. And I'm going to go for the same sort of colours. These are my homemade alcohol inks, not my purchased ones as it happens. And a bit of alcohol. I've just realised I've got gold flakes on here. Drying it with a hairdryer is not going to be a great idea. Okay, confession to make. I gave in and I dried it with the hairdryer. Big mistake, but I've still got some gold bits in there. It flipped over, so some of my ink ended up coming off. And I need to get some baking parchment to put over the top. You definitely don't want to get cling film on the bottom of your iron, so do make sure your baking parchment is big enough to cover whatever it is that you're doing. Remove my paper. And I'm going to fold that over the top. And iron it. I've got this set to my hottest setting. As I said, this is a little travel iron which I keep in the craft room. It doesn't get extremely hot. It's not like my domestic iron in that respect. And tear away the excess. And there we have it. You get the gold flake encapsulated. If you do the same transfer method, i.e. with cling film to paper, and make sure you put a baking parchment over the top of it before you iron it, you can actually transfer the design to a normal paper should you need to. For this part of the experiment, I have another piece of wood and I have painted it with one coat of white acrylic medium. It's a little bit rough feeling now because the water gets into the fibres. This is the design that I have, and I've actually done this on the sticky side, or the glue side I should say, because it's not actually feeling sticky at the moment, but the glue side of a laminating folder. So I'm going to put this right about there, I think. That will do nicely. And I have my iron switched on. I'm going to apply some heat. Now I did let the white medium dry, so I did do that. And I'm just going to iron it from the centre to the outer edges, like that. And then all I have to do is to cut off the excess. So if I wanted that as a piece of artwork, yeah, I'm quite happy. That looks quite good. And it certainly looks nice and bright and shiny without having to do anything with a UV resin or a normal resin, two-part resin. I've trimmed the excess plastic off of this. What do you think? I'm quite pleased. I think that's come out quite nicely. Now the other thing you could probably do with this is to use it on top of a tile. So for example, if you had a ceramic tile that you wanted to decorate, you could probably do the same technique and just give it a little bit of protection if it was just for a temporary use. But I'd be quite happy to put that into a frame, and yeah, I'm pleased with the way that it's come out. It's got this lovely gloss on it. I haven't had to use any resin, and it's still a lightweight piece of art, so not a bad result. You could do this in a smaller version if you wanted to, with things like cork coasters for cold drinks. I wouldn't use them for hot drinks because of the heat factor, but for cold drinks they would be fine. And again, you just trim away the excess plastic. Lots of different possibilities here. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you again soon. Take care now.